Because we were there. Oh, yeah. I was really expecting it to be exciting. Well, it didn't happen. I have a friend who had offered to maybe would give me tickets to take Charlie, and I was like, we'll get in trouble. Like, we'll just watch it.
All right, it is 5:30, so we will get started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 6th meeting of the Ames Community School District Board of Directors. I will call the meeting to order and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Winfrey, seconded by Franzen. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 5-0. And we will now read our purpose statement. If you are in the room with us this evening, we would invite you to read it along with us. The Ames Community School District commits to equity and access that empowers every individual to reach their full personal and educational potential. Thank you. And we will begin this evening with our discussion items, starting with board committee updates, and we will begin with the equity committee.
If you look at the meeting notes, you can see that we continued discussing some aspects of the equity definition. In particular, there's some images that are going to go along with it for posters. We had a good discussion about that. And then there was a data review relating to the organizational self-assessment that a variety of people throughout the district did. And then our next meeting is going to be the 16th. I think we also started talking about what the next things the committee will take on, and it might have to do with some of the discussion around data that we would be using, things like that. So any questions on anything that we have there?
All right, thank you. And then next will be the mental health committee, which we just met this afternoon at noon. We reviewed the priorities for the year that were identified by the board. And then we had a pretty lengthy discussion about the process for community mental health providers in schools. So the district has come up with a really thorough process that is sort of a top-down, where there's coordination kind of throughout the district, between buildings, and coordination here at the district office. So I was really excited to see that rolling out. And we also discussed the process for community health providers resources, how we put together resource lists, and talked a little bit about how students are referred to the providers that work in our building. So the minutes are not on here because we just met today. So those will be on there before the next meeting. Any questions for mental health committee or anything I should add, Michelle?
I'm trying to remember what our priorities were, and you don't need to go back, but I was thinking about how you just said thorough process for providers and how they're going to work through that. Great to hear they're working on that. Is there any plans for how we're supporting students outside of just providers in terms of spaces for them? Any of those kinds of maybe not identified mental health, but some of the supports. I didn't know if that goes to the mental health committee or.
Yeah, so the priorities for the year, really it was kind of, we had decided on the overarching priority of wanting to have a coordinated mental health plan from the district level on down. And that would include the providers utilizing community resources, partnering with community groups, using data, making sure that we are gathering the right data and analyzing that and figuring out if the things that we're implementing are having the change in the effect that we want to have.
Okay.
And then also one of the things on that list that we'll be getting to is support for students and staff. So there was some discussion about the spaces and things like that that we'll be having at future meetings.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
You bet. Anything else for the mental health committee? Okay. And then we will move on to our strategic planning update. And Dr. Lawson, is that to you or to Dr. Hawkins?
That is Dr.
Dr. Hawkins. All right.
Good evening.
Hello.
Everybody had a good day today. All right, well, I am excited to be able to give our board an update as to where we're at in our process and the work that we undertook last week together as a team. And so if we could, thank you so much. Good evening.
Hello.
Day today. Nice. All right, well, I am excited to be able to give our board an update as to where we're at in the process and the work that we undertook last week together. So, thank you so much. That, by the way, was a great intro. I just want to give credit where credit is due.
This is what happened when experts are gone.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna read something, why not?
Oh, it's something.
This is just the rest of the meeting. We're just gonna.
Forgive our technical difficulties.
Fantastic.
You're in the balance.
I want to thank the crew in the back. We're getting ready to roll. Okay, so if we, excuse me, sorry for the cough. If we can move to the first slide. Again, want to provide you an overview of the work of the team as well as kind of some context for where we're at in the process. So I know the board has already heard a presentation from our facilitators at Cambridge about the overall process. This slide was just included as a general reminder of where we're at. So we are entrenched in that middle blue teal portion there. We've done the readiness stage. We had that strategic planning session, and we're doing a little bit of work right now to come to consensus on components of what we planned that I'll describe for you in just a moment, and then we will be really digging into the action planning work of this team. So again, we're in that middle section right now. Before I hop into the work of what we did, I want to introduce you to kind of who was on the team and how is the team formed. So on the next slide, you're going to see the top of a graph that we'd created internally based upon the suggestions of our facilitators and based upon our knowledge of the system. So when our facilitators initially asked that we try our best to get our team to around 25 people. We weren't able to get quite to 25. In fact, we invited 30. We had a couple of people who just weren't available right at that last moment, but we had a good representative team. But within those 28 team members, what we attempted to, or what we did do was we made sure that there was a representative from every building, a representative from as many programming options as we could. So special ed programming and EL programming and dropout prevention programming and so on and so forth, success programming. We tried to make sure that there were teachers within a variety of experiences within the district and in the profession. We tried to make sure that there were classroom teachers and that there were teachers that worked outside of the classroom. We tried to make sure that there was community members who were either education partners or in our business community or maybe in the political realm of our community or had some other affiliation. We tried to make sure that the team was demographically diverse as well as, again, representing various programs. So as many ways as we could try to make a representative group that really encompassed our community in 28 people is what we did. I bring that up to say that there were several times throughout the process where someone had said, hey, I'm really excited to be a part of this, but there's lots of other folks that identify similarly to me, and I'd really like them to be able to be involved too. And of course, we would have loved that too, but needed to kind of keep this into a smaller team. So we've talked a lot with folks about the opportunity to get engaged in this process in other ways. But I wanted to be able to give the board a sense of how was the team comprised, right? You can see there total of 28 team members. Again, we were encouraged to try to go 50-50 as far as staff were concerned. We got almost there, 3 school board members, 2 high school students, and 7 community members. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is who the team was, right? So these are the names of the folks that made up all those categories, right? And that was a great team. I appreciated being a part of that team. We had really wonderful conversation over 3 days, got some really good philosophical work that we're now on the precipice of some good action work. In the next slide, you can kind of see just a broad overview, right? It's hard to represent what happens in an 8-hour day in one slide, but the big ideas of what happened on day 1 in our session was that we drafted belief statements. What do we believe about education in general, and specifically education for AIM students? And what is the mission of our schools? Regarding the mission, we were encouraged to think about a unique identity. What is a unique identity for AIM schools? What is the specific purpose that we wish to accomplish, and the critical means by which we will accomplish that purpose? And you'll see those components later on when we share that mission statement. If you want to go to the next one, on day 2, we began the day by a review of our vital documents. So we put together a hefty portfolio of documents that outlined human resources information, financial information, student achievement information, information about different initiatives in the district, a wide variety of information so that any of the stakeholders that were a part of the team could have a broader understanding of the work of the district. So that was our first hour to an hour and a half, is just kind of having different experts in those areas walk small groups through that document. Then we had the opportunity to review some student input. And I would give kudos to Erin Miller. She had a really great idea of a way to get lots of student voices in the room, even though we had 2 students in the room. So we'd had the opportunities for students to submit some videos. We had the opportunity to review student comments as they were given to the panorama survey. And so we had some both like, this is what I appreciate about school, and this is what ways I think school can be improved, some student voice, as well as wonderful perspective from the students that were in the room. Okay. We then, oh, I'm not quite ready yet, but thank you so much. I apologize for that. Thank you. We then, on day 2, examined both some internal and external factors influencing education to try to think about how that might impact our thinking about planning, and then reviewed the draft belief statements that we'd made on day 1. That's really what comprised day 2. On day 3 then, thank you, we worked to reach consensus on the mission statement. So we drafted initially 6 mission statements. We did some editing work. A small team of people went and synthesized that work into something, brought it back to the large group, still had more conversation, and eventually got to consensus on that mission statement. We again revised those draft belief statements. We created draft parameters and draft objectives. Again, we are still in the process right now of getting consensus on the belief statements, parameters, and objectives. So therefore, I'm not sharing them publicly tonight, because much of the conversation at the table in those 3 days was that we wanted to make sure that as they were shared publicly, that they were at a place where we all felt like we could say, yep, it has genuinely reached consensus and we are on board with those statements. We're there with the mission statement. So again, I'll share that in a slide or 2. I think I just described that slide, that we're working on consensus. So the next stage of work after getting to consensus is the work of our action teams. So we'll be asking action teams to take a look at the objectives. Right. These are the actions that we believe will help us to accomplish our mission. And we'll be asking those action teams to identify strategies. All right. So you may think of strategies like initiatives. What would be a strategy that the district can and should use in order to help accomplish this objective? As well as we're going to be asking them to identify action plans that could help make that strategy come to fruition. So that will be the work of these action teams once we reach consensus. We had initially talked about having action teams kick off on February 13th. Because we're still in the process of reaching consensus on some of those statements, there's a revised date and timeline for, I believe, later in February that we're working towards getting those action teams together. On the next slide, you're going to see, so what does an action team look like? Oh, maybe not. Oh, yes, you have. All right. So it's made up of both staff and community members. As I said, they're looking at the objectives and they're trying to develop both the strategies as well as the goals and the tasks that will be put forward. These proposed, so this the facilitators were clear that the work of the action teams is a proposal. So this proposed strategy and action plan will go back to the committee of 28. That committee will review it, maybe ask questions, possibly suggest tweaks and edits, but then ultimately approve what they believe is a plan worthy of coming to you as a full board. And then I believe probably May, we'll be presenting this to you as a full board, where you will also have that opportunity to approve what you think is most appropriate and potentially suggest tweaks and edits. I have one more slide after this where it talks about other ways that the board can interact with the plan, but I want to give you here the draft mission statement. I'll read it, and I know you can read it for yourself as well. But this is a mission statement that has gained consensus of that team. It reads: the mission of the Ames Community School District, which aspires to be Iowa's premier school district and a national flagship, is to inspire and empower all students and staff to pursue and maximize their personal and educational potential, grounded in strong community and family partnerships and guided by high-quality educators who commit to innovative instruction, getting every student what they need to be successful. So again, what you read in that is back to that earlier slide. You see kind of that aspirational statement of unique identity, right? You see the purpose by which we exist, which is to inspire and empower all students and staff to pursue and maximize their full educational potential. And you see the critical means, which is being grounded in strong community and family partnerships and guided by high quality educators who commit to innovative instruction, so on and so forth, right? So you see all three of those components in that draft mission statement. I will say one of the things that there were many things that I enjoyed about those 3 days. One of them for me personally was the amount of conversation that we had about what our facilitators called the triangle of support. That was the fact that if we're going to accomplish a lofty mission like this, it really requires the work of the district, the work of the community, and the work of families all together in a triangle of support around both this plan and our learners in order to accomplish this. Those were good conversations for me personally to continue to draw back to, as well as you see incorporated in our mission statement. I think potentially my final slide before opening it up for questions is just to review opportunities for the board to provide input to the plan. Of course, as you know, as the board, you get the final say over the plan, right? So there'll be proposals brought to you at the end of the process, but you get final approval of that plan. But we will continue to provide updates to the board at various stages through the process, including as our action teams are beginning work, what strategies are being identified, what are some draft goals and tasks, action plans that are being identified. Once consensus has been reached on the other components that I described this morning or today, we'll share those as well. Certainly, we've got 3 board members that are serving there, and we can provide feedback on the plan to those members. And again, the action teams will bring proposals in April, and then again, ultimately, the board will approve that plan. I think that's my last slide before any questions you might have. Oh, no, one more, just a quick thank you to the team, right? So we've got our team there that participated in that day, and don't want to miss the opportunity to say thank you publicly to all the people who gave their time, and the amount of care and concern for our community and for our students was palpable throughout the days. And so we're very appreciative of that team. What questions do you have?
I'll start. So for
That one
clarification,
caught me off guard. Okay.
can you just talk us a little through reaching consensus versus majority voting?
Sure. Yeah. One, our facilitators stressed that it was really important that we reach a place where we were in agreement. Not that most of the people in the room were in agreement, but that we truly were in a place where when we were done, at least all 28 members of that planning team felt like they genuinely could be an ambassador of that plan. So that it's not Dr. Lawson's plan, that it's not the district's plan, it's not the board's plan. This is a plan that we can all be behind as community members and family members and students and staff. And so getting to a place where, yes, it may not be, I love it, but at least it's, I can live with this. I can be behind this. For every person is critical to moving forward with this plan.
I have a question about kind of where the board comes in. Obviously, we have the 3 board members on the committee. But I'm wondering, you mentioned that we'll see proposals and then ultimately we approve the plan. Will we see that in pieces as those proposals come together and then approve a final whole strategic plan? Or what is the board's, I guess here's what I'm wondering, is a complete plan going to come to us with a yes, no vote? Or is there another step in there? Does that make sense?
So I've not worked through with these facilitators before, but I believe based on my impression that the answer is yes. And so, yes, eventually a plan will come to the board for a yes, no vote. And yes, I believe there will be opportunities for the board to have input at various stages in the process. I have found our facilitators to be responsive, so that if we say, hey, we're thinking about this, or we want, they have regular planning meetings with Aaron and I. And so I'm sure if we said, we'd really like to see a process in the middle of the proposal stage where our board got an update about those proposals, then we would just need to structure those so people know that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how others feel. If there's some part of it that I'm hung up on, I don't want that to be the thing when we go to vote yes, no. So the chance to ask questions as those proposals might be helpful for me.
One thing we had discussed is, or proposed, maybe is a better word, is that for the board level, that it wouldn't necessarily just come as action, but it'd come like to a work session or something. Taking into account the fact that depending on how that comes, that might be the first time the entire board's seen it, to try to prevent that type of thing where it just feels like a rubber stamp on something somebody else did, but more, we could ask some questions and work through it. So I think that might be what Jeff's talking about, and maybe still needs finalized in the timeline. But this is probably a good point to discuss it. I mean, do you think that would meet what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think I would like to have an opportunity to ask questions and, give feedback or get clarification before we get to that just yes, no vote, because I don't want to be like, well, there's this one thing I'm real hung up on, and now I feel like I have to vote no after all this work's been done, where we could work that in a work session or just through these sort of updates.
Yeah.
Kelly, can I ask?
What would be helpful? So sitting around the 3 days of strategic planning meetings, there was a lot of wordsmithing, if you can imagine. Lots of take a sentence and rewrite it 20 times over the course of half an hour kind of stuff.
I've been on the
and I
equity
think
committee.
we probably want to avoid that
Yes.
at the board table. So, I think we would want to bring it and know if people are have major objections to something important, while also not rewriting every sentence 20 times at the table, given.
I think that's a great point. And I wouldn't say, kind of like with the equity definition, once there's been all that it's already been wordsmithed a lot. The question might be more my understanding of what those intentions were, what the philosophy is, what this looks like in practice, just to clarify what the meaning and context is. But yeah, I would avoid wordsmithing unless I saw a grammatical error.
Yeah, and I guess the thing I would add to that, I look at it a couple of different ways. One is that we did sort of all agree to delegate these three folks to represent the board. And so putting a lot of faith in the three of you to do that well, and I'm sure that you will. And then keeping in mind that this has had so much input. So for there to be something, in my mind, something that one of us who is not on that committee would object to at the very end would have to be something pretty significant. So I think we'll see, my understanding is pieces as we can throughout the process, we will see those pieces. And obviously these updates provide us with opportunity to ask questions. We can always, you can send questions to Alan or something like that. If there's something you'd like to have brought to the committee or send them to Jeff to bring to the committee. But I agree that we want to really avoid at the end having those of us who were not on the committee introduce too many
And I think
wrenches.
there's a balance between, yes, we've delegated, but we're all individual voting members of the board,
Right.
that we need to feel comfortable with that vote.
Yeah.
And this is 28 people. It looks like you've done a great job putting together people, but it's not every perspective. It's not every viewpoint. So I just want to make sure that when I vote yes, which hopefully that's the way that all goes, that I feel good about that.
That's what I hope for too.
I think something I would add, if you go up 2 slides to the mission statement, please. Whoever that, yeah. So if you look at it, it says draft.
Mhm.
And additionally, you will get, once we get consensus, you'll get the draft belief statements, you'll get the draft parameters, and you'll get the draft objectives. And they are named that because this is an opportunity for all of you to give us your feedback. It's also an opportunity for the community to say, okay, I understand that you are in your draft phase. Give us the feedback because we are meeting again, like Dr. Hawkins said, in a couple of months. So that is an opportunity for everyone to give us that feedback and for all of you, obviously, those of us here, because we do, like Amy Erica said, I mean, when we say that we worked on this mission statement, it was, okay, a group went out and then they came back in the room and then they went out. And the final group to go out Wednesday morning, there was a group of us that came back up and we still changed it in the room because there was still very meaningful discussion that those of us, some of you were chuckling, but it was really good discussion. And I was in that small group that brought it back in. And I really appreciated what the people said when we got back in the room because they pointed things out. So I think that's just really important for everybody to understand when we see draft mission statement, that's where we are. Now, do we want to completely scrap it and change directions? No, but we do want you to understand that we felt at that point that this was really our best work and we were ready for everybody to see it and to give us some feedback. So,
One question, sorry, just to finish this point. Jeff, I think you said it, but after the action plan team proposals are done, those will be seen by the board before the committee comes back together for the final time, right?
We can certainly structure it that way. That level of detail hasn't been discussed with our facilitators yet, but if that's the board's preference and we would like to do it, I'm sure we could structure it.
That might be a good way to think about this, because then if Kelly sees something and wants to represent a different perspective that might have been missed, she could contact one of the three of us, and I'm sure we could try to represent that perspective
When it
in the
goes to
room
the
as
full.
well.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Exactly.
Another suggestion would be, so there will be a stage where we've reached consensus on all of the things outlined tonight. And the teams have begun their initial work to identify the major strategies. Again, I would use the word initiatives maybe, but they will have started to identify the major strategies that they think will be helpful to accomplish that objective. But they won't have gotten so far yet that they maybe have a year's worth of an action plan with measurable goals. Once we get to that stage where, these are the strategies that we think are going to be meaningful, that might be a time that the board wants to put their eyes on it, because we will have the philosophical components worked out, but we'll also be starting to get a hint of the pragmatic pieces that will be used to take into action. That might be a time where the board might want to have complete input both over the philosophical and wait a minute, I don't see this pragmatic piece, or why is this pragmatic piece there type of thing. That might be a stage we could consider as well.
I think something I would add on process, since you were talking about the action planning teams, the 3 board members that have served so far on the strategic planning team, we're not a part of those action planning teams, because we're starting to get into the areas that our educational professionals understand. We may have community members, whether they have some personal experiences or some personal knowledge or professional sets that may be a good match for those action teams. So we actually are pulling out of this part, and that's intentional, because we really are at that high level of providing that guidance, high level direction for the district as a part of that, and now relying on our professionals and our community members to drive the next phase.
Director Lipkitis, did you have a question?
I do have a question. Thank you, Jeff. So part of this process, does it involve developing a vision statement?
No, there was not a specific component of the work that they outlined as a vision statement. In my experience with vision statements and trying to make a correlate to their work, I believe the belief statements are what is going to embody the vision statement.
Well, a vision statement is what we aspire to be.
Agreed.
And so your mission statement or your draft statement includes a vision statement.
Yep, I read aspirational in there too.
I would ask my fellow board members to bring back to the committee to ask if a mission statement should include a vision statement of what we aspire to be. The only other suggestion I would have is that when you use words like flagship and premier school district, what does that mean? That's my only comment at this time.
All right, thank you. Director Franson, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have another question?
No, I'm writing.
I think that was
I'm
Kelly.
taking notes.
Kelly, were you going to say something?
Go ahead.
As someone who wasn't directly involved in any of this, there seems to be some confusion. I just want to know a little bit more. What exactly is this plan going to be doing? I know you say the final strategies and stuff like that has not been worked out, but how is this going to manifest in the everyday student's life? What are we going to see in our schools, and what is this going to be changing in terms of the district?
That's a great question. So ideally, a strategic plan should help on 2 sides of a line, right? So as I've said to many folks, there is more good work that can happen in education than any one organization should do, right? So we can be a school driven by this initiative or that initiative or that initiative, but we probably shouldn't be a district driven by all the initiatives. So this strategic plan will help establish both a philosophical grounding. What do we believe in? Who do we strive to become? What are we working to accomplish for the betterment of our students and our community? As well as then give us the pragmatics of what exactly are we going to be doing to accomplish those purposes. The action plans of those will help drive implementation planning on our side as a district, so that for several years, it should guide what does the learning of our staff look like? What is the goals that we report out to our board and our community look like? What data is most important for us to track? It may get so far, depending upon the strategies chosen, to what are some of the pedagogical approaches? What are some of the ways that we think teaching is done best to impact the classroom setting? But for me, as a district leader, one of the things that's most important is it will not only identify what we're going to be doing, but also help set some parameters of what we're not going to be doing, right? Our focus is not going to be here because our focus is here. And because our focus is here, and we're going to sustain that focus and get good results on that focus, this might be a great initiative over here. That's not our initiative right now. It's really important, I think, for educational institutions to be grounded in what are we doing that aligns to our philosophical beliefs, and what are we not doing? Because there's a lot of really good things out there, and it's important that we're focused.
I think one follow-up I'd have for Will on that too, the two students that were on the committee, which were awesome, asked that question quite a bit as well. And one of the conclusions we came to that I think you could help us with is that we would like to have significant student input and membership on some of the action planning teams, because, you know, at the end of the day, students have a say in all this too, and it's in the buildings where students are. So if you could help recruit people that might want to do that and get them in touch with Dr. Lawson, I think that would be excellent.
In fact, since we talked about it, coming out of that work, the suggestion of that committee, of that 28 person team, was that each action team should have on it at a minimum one student, one teacher, and one community member. Now we're hoping for robust teams with much more than that. But that was kind of the charge coming out of that committee, is that each of those teams should have at least those components.
So Will's question and your answer reminded me what I was going to ask/comment. So you talked about there being, you know, an action plan with, you know, implementation and measurable goals. So does this include how we're going to measure those goals? Like what data we're going to use to measure those goals? So from a board perspective, when we're looking at how well are we doing? Is that going to tell us what data we should be looking at, or is that something separate that we need to talk about as a board?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I know you haven't done this before.
Yeah, we're a little further down the road than what our plan is. Although I guess my answer to this, and Dr. Lawson, feel free to hop in at any time you like. Also, I can't imagine why we would establish a philosophy as well as pragmatic action and then not go about figuring out how to measure our progress based upon those strategies and actions. And it would make sense to me that if we're going to measure our progress, that we choose relevant and pertinent data sets to that measurement. So I can't imagine a scenario in which it doesn't drive our goals and our measurements, but to say it doesn't have that at this stage and that hasn't really been articulated, I just can't fathom how we do this work and then don't let it drive our data cycles and routines and the goals we write and so on and so forth. And if I've misspoken.
No, that's a great response. I would just add to that implementation piece and then measuring those goals and deciding or determining which metrics we'll take a look at comes much later in the process.
The other thing I would prepare, at least I'm preparing myself for, is that I also think as we think about strategies to accomplish really meaningful, important objectives to accomplish our mission, we might find that there's multiple strategies within the objectives. So therefore, I'm preparing myself for, we may need to work particularly within the staff around prioritizing those strategies. You know, the phrase, you can't eat an elephant in one bite, right? Like we may have to think through about what are our highest leverage strategies that we want to try to accomplish first. And then what will measurement of success of that strategy look like so that we know we're ready to move on to other strategies. And maybe I'm wrong and we can accomplish all the stuff at the same time, but it's not my guess.
Any other questions for Dr. Hawkins or Dr. Lawson?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, and Amy, I think my sheet is updating. I don't see anyone signed up to speak under discussion items on the online forum. No, okay. All right, then we will go ahead and move on to our public forum. And I will read our statement on public comments. Residents of the district, students attending the district, parents or guardians of students attending the district, and district staff members may address the board about any topic relevant to the district, whether on the current agenda or not. Those who wish to speak must sign up at the beginning of the meeting. Speaker participation is limited to 3 minutes once per item. The views and opinions of citizens addressing the board do not necessarily reflect those of the board, district administration, or staff. Speakers are to remember that Iowa law prohibits the board from discussing specific employees, students, or their performance. Student speakers will state their name and school. Others will state their name and address. And first tonight, we have Tom Emerson.
Good evening. I'm speaking here tonight on behalf of Reggie Greenlaw, who was an Ames High School teacher for 34 years, from 1981 to 2015. About Wayne Hanson. Wayne Hanson was an essential part of Ames High School. I'm not going to start over.
You can go ahead and start where you were.
Unless you beg. Essential part anyway, in his many years of teaching theater and directing plays. He dedicated his life to making sure that everyone who participated had the opportunity to perform, grow, and learn theater arts to the best of their abilities. He had the rare gift of extracting skills from his students that they didn't even know they possessed. He was funny, iconoclastic, knowledgeable, and was able to reach students from a multiplicity of backgrounds and attitudes, encouraging them to join and participate in the most inclusive tribe, not exclusive, most inclusive tribe in the building. He was a great man and deserves to be remembered. It is completely appropriate and right to dedicate Ames High's new auditorium to the work of this wonderful man. That's from Reggie Greenlaw. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tom. And next we have Victoria Van Boris.
Good evening. I am Victoria Van Boris, 110 East 9th Street. And I also am presenting a letter in support of naming the new high school auditorium after Wayne Hanson. As a sidebar before I start this, the letter writer mentions being a thespian. And I just wanted to make sure that you understood what that meant in the terms of this context. There is an International Thespian Society that is the only honor society that is for specifically middle school and high school students. And at one time, I don't know if they still do, Wayne Hanson started a chapter here with the International Thespian Society. So I just wanted to make everyone understood not just who Thespis was, because nobody knows anymore, but what they meant in this context. Hank was one of the formative teachers of my high school years. So much so that when I told my kids that I was going to write a testimonial about him, they knew exactly who he was because I regularly tell stories about my time with him. I was not a great actor. I had parts in a few plays, but I was a thespian, and my joy was working behind the scenes. Hank spent almost every Saturday in the auditorium in the old Ames High building, providing a space for a diverse group of teenagers to create wonders. One spring, our production required a massive tree. It needed to span most of the stage and needed to support actors in its branches. Hank put me in charge of building that tree. I was a 16-year-old girl at the time. And it was an awesome responsibility. Tools, engineering, organizing my fellow set builders. Is it any wonder I became a math teacher? Hank called me Mother Nature for the weeks we spent building that set. He gave us all so much responsibility and set high expectations and the support to achieve what he asked for us. Naming the auditorium after Hank would be a great tribute to this man who gave so many students so much joy. Terrell Salter, class of 1993, high school math teacher, State College, Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. And we do not have anyone else signed up to speak, so I will close our public forum and move on to our consent items, and I will entertain a motion.
Move approval of consent items as presented.
Second.
Moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Smith, and Superintendent Lawson, gifts to the district.
Yes, thank you. The superintendent's office received the completed form for and recommends acceptance of the following gifts. at a $200 value, a snare drum donated by Susan Tucker for the benefit of Fellows Elementary Band Program, $50 cash from Michelle Long for the benefit of the Lunch Hero Program, and a $12.90 cash donation from an anonymous donor to anonymous donors for the benefit of the Lunch Hero Program. And that's all we have in terms of gifts to the district.
Thank you. It was moved by Beerbaum, seconded by Smith to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Moving on to our action items, we'll start with our policies for action.
I move the board approve the policies as presented.
Second.
Moved by Winfrey, seconded by Franzen. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Middle school track surfacing 2023.
I move the board approve plans and specifications, form of contract, notice to bidders, advertisement to bid, and estimated total cost for the Ames Middle School track surfacing 2023 project.
Second.
Moved by Franzen, seconded by Beerbaum. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0.
I move the board set the date of public hearing on March 6, 2023, and direct the board secretary to publish the notice no sooner than February 15th, 2023.
Second.
Moved by Franzen, seconded by Beerbaum. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. And that will bring us to our student representative board and staff items. We will begin with our student representative.
This time, I just wanted to reiterate the concern of some of the student body after what happened today, but otherwise I don't have anything else.
Thank you, Will. Items from the board. Under requests for staff, I guess I have the little bit of clarification on strategic planning moving forward and how we might present some of those things to the board along the way. But that's all that I noted. If you had anything else, anyone? Okay, other items from the board?
I just want to thank staff and especially Dr. Lawson for the pursuit of the strategic planning. That was an excellent but very full set of days. I mean, we didn't have consensus, but that wasn't because we didn't have people there to do it. It was because we ran out of time and energy at the last day because there was so much we were doing. And I want to thank Dr. Lawson especially for having his voice and vision heard and kind of being inspiring in that and the things he was putting together. A lot of what we did, once I looked back during one of the days, it's in his 100-day plan. It's like the same type of stuff he was saying. And I think that speaks volumes that what he took from that is exactly what the community is saying now. So thank you for all that, Dr. Lawson. Thank you.
I just want to thank the staff in reference to Will's comment about today. I felt like as a parent, the communication that went out was very helpful. I really appreciated that the chart was included so that we could all remind ourselves what the terminology meant, because obviously the terminology is always hard to hear, but understanding what the terminology and your timeliness of it, I really appreciated. So thank you to all of you.
And I just wanted to congratulate all of our girls who attended the first ever Iowa High School Girls Wrestling Tournament. We had some place winners and the team as a whole did amazing. And it's just really exciting to see that sport take off. And I'm glad for all the participation we have in Ames. Thank you to all the coaches and volunteers who made that happen. All right, items from the superintendent.
Yes, just a couple of really quick thanks. So for one, I'd like to thank the members of our board who participated in the strategic planning. Thank you to all of our staff who are here, but thanks to the entire group of 28 folks who participated alongside us. That was a really long and heavy 3 days. So thank you. Thanks to all of you. I'd also like to thank the staff. So it's not very often that You get to thank the staff that works alongside you here at the district office for the work that they do, but the response around today, I greatly appreciate. I genuinely appreciate. I was outside of the office and I was about to go into a presentation. And so, right, lots of anxiety, but Dr. Hawkins, so thank you. And thanks to all of the staff who responded, Amy, and all of the other members of the team. So thanks so much.
All right. Moving on to our board planning calendar. Our next meeting will be February 20th at 6:30 p.m. I do have sort of something for board members to think about. The county conference board meeting, I lost the word for a minute there, is Wednesday this week, and I am not able to attend, and it was not on my radar on my calendar all until today. So if anyone is able to attend, shoot me an email, let me know, and I will let Wayne know. It's at 6:30. Yeah, so I'll shoot an email out to you, but just thought I'd put that out there since we're talking about the calendar. Any other items on the board planning calendar? Okay, then we will take a 3-minute break and we'll reconvene in our work session, which will be around the winter map assessment data. And we will be ending our live broadcast at this time.